Alright, so today we're going to be talking about loop control statements. And basically what they do is they deviate the loop from its normal sequence. Once these statements are used, then either the loop ends or something happens, but the whole loop doesn't run like it is. Okay? So let's quickly talk about the three main loop control statements. So there's three of them, right? Break, continue, and pass. Break, continue, pass, BCP. So the first statement we're going to be talking about is break. And all break does is it terminates the loop statement and transfers the execution to whatever's next. So for example, I'm going to create a while loop over here. While counter, or actually let me create the counter variable first. So counter is going to be equal to counter is equal to 0. Alright. And then let's go ahead and create the while loop. So while counter is less than 100, print counter is equal to counter plus 1. So do this and we get all the numbers from 0 to 99. Fantastic. Now, what if I told you I want this loop to end after the fourth number is printed? How would that work? Well, let's go ahead and get our code back from up over here. And this is where the if and else statements come in, or actually the break statement here. So if counter is equal to 4, for example, then I want to break. So as you can see, as soon as we wrote break, it has now been highlighted in orange, which means that it's an inbuilt Python function. And now if we run this, I'm sorry, counter right now is 100 still, so let's go ahead and set counter back to 0. And now if we run this program, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, and then as soon as counter hit the 4, the whole function broke, or the whole loop broke. So this is the nice thing about break. For example, wherever you're running this huge while loop, but somewhere in the middle, once your task is complete, you can break the loop to save yourself some time, some energy, etc. So the break command is actually quite useful, and we'll definitely be using it in the future. Now, the second one I want to talk about is pass. Many a times when you're writing Python code, especially with loops, you'll come to a point where you have this if and else statement, and you need an else, but you're not sure what to write in the else statement. For example, let's go ahead and get this code down over here. So if counter is equal to 4, break, else, pass. So all the pass statement does is when you use the pass statement when you don't want any code, anything to be run. So when we use the pass statement in this else part, all it's saying is I don't want you to do anything. Just continue along whatever you're doing. I don't care about this. Just let it be. So pass is basically what you'd call a filler statement. Doesn't do anything, but it acts as code. So right now, once we run this, we'll get, or let's set the counter back to 0. Sorry about that. Counter is equal to 0. And now if we run this code, so let's go ahead and run it, we'll get 0, 1, 2, 3. Because every time when it checked, is the counter equal to 4 and got no, it just got passed. So nothing really happened. So pass is quite useful whenever you're dealing with code that you don't have anything to write, or it's an if and else statement and you're just trying to filler up those filler up code. Pass is fantastic. Now last but not least, we're talking about the continue statement. So the continue statement rejects all the remaining statements in your loop and moves the control to wherever you want it. So the way this would work is, for example, let's go ahead and create a very simple for loop. Alright. So for let's go ahead and iterate through a string. So for I in Python, okay, let's say if letter is equal to h. So actually if I is equal to h here, equal to h. So I know I haven't talked about this before, but if you iterate through a string of some sort, I will be assigned each character of the string. So Python. So if I is equal to h, then I'm going to say continue. And I'll explain this code, don't worry, but let's go ahead and take a look at what it does. So if I is equal to h, continue. And then I want to print out I. Alright, so a very simple, what would you say? A very simple for loop in which we're using continue. So print I, let's go ahead and run this. We get Python. Wow. So let's see what just happened here. We used this for I in Python, okay? We iterated through each character of Python, and then we said if I is equal to H, continue. And all continue did is it bypassed anything else that was written here, okay? Bypassed it, didn't care about what was there, just moved on, and then the loop started again. So continue is neat when you have code that you don't want to run, but it's there. So you're using that code for the beginning few letters, but then for maybe the sixth letter, you don't need that code to be run. That's where you'd use the continue function so that this all the other code would not be even considered. So let's go ahead and let's do one more example with continue. So I'm going to create another for loop for I in range 0, 5. And then I want to say if I is equal or if I is less than 2, then I want to continue. And then I want to print out I. So now if you notice, if you run this, we're only going to get 2, 3, and 4. Because continue will bypass any statement that is underneath it. And I guess continue is actually quite a neat statement when you're dealing with codes of some sort. But yeah, these are the 3 main loop control statements. Let's quickly recap what we learned. There's break, there's pass, and there's continue. So what does break do? Break breaks out a loop. If you're in a for loop, it'll break out of it. If you're in a while loop, it'll break out of it. Just completely ends the execution of the code. Next, we have, let's go with pass. Pass is basically that filler statement. For example, if you have code, but you maybe have an if and else statement, and you have the if part done, but for else, you're using like those normal print statements that print out gibberish because you have nothing to do there. That's where you'd put a pass statement so that it would act as a filler code. And then last but not least, we have continue. For example, if you have an instance where you don't want the below code to run, you'd do an if statement for that specific instance and then write continue. And all continue would do is bypass any of the code written underneath it and make sure the loop iterates over once again. So definitely 3 very neat functions that we'll be using later on in the course. Make sure you mentally note these down or jot these down, that there's break, pass, and continue. And I'll see you in the next lecture.